Hello again, this is Lino Tadros, and we continue with Semantic Kernel Fundamentals. And in this video, we're not going to do much of Semantic Kernel, but I just need to create a regular REST API application, web API. You can do it in .NET, in Ruby on Rails, Java, Python, whatever you'd like, okay? The goal here is that I would like to make it based on the OpenAPI specification. That means I'm going to add Swagger to it. And after I create this in this video, the next video, I just want to find out what do I need to do to take a regular REST API application, for instance, and being able to put a semantic kernel wrapper around it without writing much code at all. I don't need to create kernel functions or anything. I just want to take the entire REST API, all maybe the CRUD operations that I'm trying to do, and automatically let semantic kernel put kernel functions in front of every single route that we have or searches in these functions itself. That would be really awesome. Not only that, I can do the same thing with MCP servers. So if I already have an MCP server, now I want to make semantic kernel work with it. I don't have to go rewrite that code and put kernel functions in front of every single function and all that stuff. No, that is actually a much easier way to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, I'm back in Visual Studio Code. And I'm not going to create a project number 10. I just want to create a completely separate project that will allow me to create a REST API. So let's go ahead and do a Control-Shift-P in here. And I'm going to create a brand new project. But this time it's not going to be a console app. I want to see if I can get into ASP.NET Web API. There you go. Our native AOT. There is Razor Pages. Web API. I want to get the web API, but I get one that has the model controller. Let me see where I can find that. There is ASP.NET Core web app with the model view controller. That sounds good to me. I'm going to click on that. We'll call this one, I'm going to create one that has to do with my company. I have a company here called Tahubu, and I want to actually be able to do CRUD operation on all the employees of the company, for instance. So I'll say Tahubu API sample, okay? We're going to hard code it. We're not going to write code too much because that's not the goal behind what I'm trying to do. I just want to create a Swagger-based API. That means it's using the OpenAPI specification. Let's click on that. We'll create a folder. We'll add it to the solution. And all of a sudden, I have a sample. It has controllers. It has a sample home controller. It has views, which I'm not going to need. I can delete that. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do, which is the most important probably, is the project itself. I need to come in here and I need to bring in a NuGet package that is very important for the OpenAPI specification. And that is to bring in the NuGet package for swashbuckle.asp.NET Core. Use the latest version if you can. As of right now, I'm using 8.1. But that will enable me to enable Swagger and creating the JSON for Swagger on the fly as well. So I'm going to save this file. That will bring in automatically the NuGet package. And now in the program.cs, I can add some code in here to allow me to incorporate the dependency injection of Swagger itself based on the OpenAPI specification. All right, first couple of things I'm going to do. I'm not going to need views at all. All these will just be REST API. So I can come in here, instead of saying add controllers with views, I'm just going to say add controllers. That's good enough for me. I'm also going to bring in the services for add endpoints API Explorer and the service for add Swagger gen as well. Oops, I found out why we have a red line under the add Swagger. And the reason is I entered this wrong. This needs to be inside of an item group on the project line. So let me fix that really quickly. So we'll have the item group on the root in there, and then I'll bring in the NuGet package. So don't forget that. Copy and paste sometimes causes problems. All right, sounds good. I'm going to go back to the program.cs. Yes, and this time there is no red line under add Swagger gen. So we'll be in pretty good shape and we can keep going. All right, and now I need to use the service for the add Swagger gen to create the JSON or the XML-based file that contains all this information. So the way to do that, we'll come in here and we will do this. We'll say builder services add Swagger gen. And we will use the option in here to goes into, and we will create the XML file name based on the assembly. Again, assembly needs to happen on the reflection. So let me go ahead and also get that using statement. We'll go all the way to the top and we'll bring in using system.reflection right there. That will fix the assembly. But you will notice something very weird. I mean, this is part of the documentation of how to create a .NET Core app using Swagger gem. But you will notice if you're using Visual Studio Code, this is actually going to cause a problem. And the reason for that is the project itself is not allowing for the generation of this XML file. It's easier to do it if you're inside of Visual Studio 2022, for instance, because you can go to the properties of the project and you can turn it on to true, for instance, for the generation of the XML. But in Visual Studio Code, you really need to know how to do this on the project level. So let me go to the project level in here. And right inside of the property group, let me create a new line. And this is the line that you need. You need to say generate documentation file. It has to be set to true. The default is false. So if you don't have that line set to true, you will not be able to generate the XML file based on the Swagger inside of the project. Again, if you search really hard on the internet, you will find out in Visual Studio Code how to enable the generation of this XML file that will describe everything about the Swagger file for your project itself. All right, let's go ahead and implement it. I'm not going to spend too much time to explain. This is not about REST APIs or anything like that. So I'm going to go to the controller. I don't need really the home controller, so I'm going to delete it. So we'll say bye-bye to this file. And what I would like to do is to create a brand new file in here. We'll say create a new file, and we'll call it something like, what do we call it? We're going to employee controller, for instance. Employee controller.cs. And I'm going to be pasting in some code in here. These will do all the different CRUD operation for how to create a brand new employee, how to delete one, how to search one by ID, all of the stuff in here. Of course, for us to be using the entity of employee, I need to go to models and I need to create a model in here for what an employee is all about. So I copied my file. I'm going to go to models, right click and say paste. There is my employee.cs. It's a very simple file, as you can see. It has a class called employee that contains the name, the address, the city, the state, and a zip code, and maybe an email. All right. So I'm going to save this file. I'm also going to save the project itself as well, and the controller. So all of them are saved right now. All right. The only thing left is creating a service. And this is where I'm going to be mimicking some employees of Tahubo. Okay. Usually in real life, this would be a database in the cloud or in a data center that can get you information from the database itself. But here I'm going to fake it just for the test itself. So I'm going to create on the project level. We're going to say new folder. We'll call this one services, for instance. And inside of the services, I'm going to be bringing in a file that implements the employee repository. So it's called employee repository.cs. And as you can see from the code in here, that class will allow us to list all the employees, get all the employees, get by ID. So it's pretty much a wrapper around the what the controller is going to be calling into. And at the end, I'm going to be faking some employees. So I'm going to add 3 records to the employee list in here for using the model. It would have Kyle, Joel, and Lino with some fake addresses and cities and zip codes and the email address and all that stuff. Just to mimic that. So just remember, in real life, this will be CRUD operations, I guess, against the database, or REST APIs, or REST APIs that has endpoints in another REST API, whatever you would like to do. You can use Entity Framework or any kind of ORM to actually build that with a real database if you want. I'm just making it fake here a little bit to make this work really quickly. All right, let's go back to the program.cs. So after I added the controllers, the endpoint, API Explorer, the Swagger gen, and I actually brought in the creation of the XML file that will explain the whole Swagger JSON file. I'm going to go right before I start building everything, and I'm going to come in here and add a singleton for the employee repository, and that would be coming in from services. So obviously I will need to bring in the services as well. So let's click on that. We'll say quick fix. And using Tahubo API sample.services, let's add that to the using statement, and we'll be in pretty good shape. All right, great. There are 2 things left. Remember, I did the dependency injection to bring in the Swagger, but I did not use it in my app. I didn't tell it how to actually use it. So maybe we'll go right after the build in here. Let's go ahead and add a couple of lines. One of them is to tell the app that we're going to use Swagger, and one that will use the option to create a lambda in here to say that the Swagger point will be /Swagger v1 Swagger.json, just to be conforming with actually the OpenAPI specification. We'll give it a name, Tahubu Employees API version 1, and we'll do the route prefix. We'll leave it empty completely. It will respect the routes coming in from the system right away. I don't actually have a home or anything like that, so I can actually end up deleting all of that stuff. I don't need it. So let me remove that. It's just noise at this point. I don't even need to have a specific route or anything, so I can delete all that code. We'll just say map the controllers, open and close, and that's it. So by the time I do the app.run, if I run this locally on my machine, I will have access to call all the different entry points in my controllers, which is the employee controller that I've created in here. As you can see, employee controller. And I can get all the routes from there to try it out. So let's give it a shot and see if it will work on my machine. Let's save this file, come in here, we'll say cd, we'll cd into the Tahubu API sample, and we'll say .NET run. All right, that will take care of the restoration of the NuGet packages, compile everything in here, and I'm hoping that we will, oh, there's some warnings, yeah, it's no big deal. But yep, it is running at localhost 5033. Let me go ahead and push the control key down and hit this line, and that will open up hopefully the Swagger file. So it will go to the localhost 5033, the index.html. There is the Swagger specification in here, and it was able to find out that we have get employee post for creating a brand new employee, the get by ID, the delete, and the search as well. So all of them in here. If I would like to try one of them, let's bring this and say try it out. We'll say execute. It should have the Lino, the Kyle, and Joel all coming back in here. So it looks like it's running. I'm going to keep it running, but the important thing for me now, like I would like to see how Semantic Kernel can actually wrap all this functionality without writing any code whatsoever. So we'll do that in the next video.